Hello, my name is Mark. This is Mark's Coding Projects, and today we are going to be saving our connections in the event of a server failure or client disconnect. So in the last video, we managed to get the two clients to connect to each other, which obviously is a big deal. Very pleased with that, so made a lot of progress last time. Sorry if you think it's sort of a long video, but I thought I'd make it realistic. If you could comment on that video and say whether you like the longer format, or if you prefer sort of to be condensed down, then that'd be greatly appreciated. So in today's video, what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to save connections in this text file, and we're going to want to save game boards. The reason for this, well, there's a couple of reasons. So we can build a save sort of capabilities off the back of this. So say you decide, oh, I'm a bit busy at the minute, we start playing a game, oh, I need to go do blah. You might want to save a game, so we can build that functionality if we create this. Equally, a client or the server may go down / disconnect. So in those events, you're going to want to take a backup almost of your of your data. So the couple of things that I'm thinking of, what we can do is we can, in order to back up the server, we will run something on the client, and in order to back up the client, we will run something on the server. That's what I'm thinking. So if the client goes down, the server will pick up that the client's gone down, and it will write the required information, so the board and the connection, to a text file. If a client connects that it's been disconnected from the server, then it's going to want to create a text file containing its information relating to its personal game. And then what the server will then have to do is I have to request all of these from every individual client, and it will compile it into a list to load it all back up, so that all the different client games are loaded back to the server and it can maintain it and manage it, that kind of thing. It's not really, I've not really fully thought out this thing yet. I'm just sort of laying out kind of what I want to do. This is like the really high level kind of what it is we want to achieve. The practicalities of it I've not thought of at all. So I thought a good way to start would be just making a text file which holds all of the connections that we have in the game. And these aren't individual connections to the server. These are connections between players. So hang on. So the way I'm thinking of doing it is you have, when you connect to the game, the code is going to search this file, and it's going to try and save your IP to this text file. So it may save it just on its own. It may match you up with a partner, or it may see they're connected and then have to save it on its own again. So what I mean by that is there's three different states. There's a state when the text file is empty, and you need to just save the first ever IP to the first line of the text. There's the second option when the text file isn't empty, but there are available clients to connect to. And in that circumstance, you need to match up your well, in this case, you need to match up player 2's IP to player 1. Thirdly, the text file might not be empty, but all of the IPs in there may already be matched up. So we don't want player 3 just bolting itself onto the end. We want player 3 to go onto a new line, so it needs to be able to recognize that as well. Yeah, I've written some of the code, but I I was recording a little bit earlier, and I feel like it's quite inefficient. So I'm going to talk to you guys about kind of what I've done so far, kind of get you up to speed. Equally, if you want to try this yourself and try and create some sort of solution whereby player IPs are saved to a text file, then just pause the video, have a go, and then come back and see, test it, see what I got, that kind of thing. It might be quite a good learning exercise if you try and have a go yourself, and then if you get stuck or anything, then I'm sure I'll have something figured out for you. I'm sure. That's a lie. You might come back in like half an hour, and I'm still slamming my head against the desk, so we'll have to wait and see. I do have some existing code. If you're wanting to code on yourself, then you really need to stop watching by now, because I'm just going to spill the beans. So I have made a write connection method. You'll notice it's static, and it takes a socket. The reason for this is because we want the IP and port number of the connection, and that's connection to the server, not connection between clients. So we want the IP and port number of the client, and we want it to be static because this is currently being run in the main method. This may change. I'm not sure. I have a couple of things about that when this is going to be actually done, because it might be done. What am I trying to say? This code execution might be moved, so I may well move this to write connection method to the connection container. Honestly, I don't know. I do not know. I'm gonna have to see what I think works best. It's tricky because you need to it's hard. The thing that I'm kind of struggling with at the moment is trying to pinpoint when it is that we want to save connections to our backup. So, do we want to do it at the beginning, or do we want to just save connections to our backup file as and when stuff goes down? And the point at which stuff goes down, like here, for example, connection failed, that kind of thing. If a client disconnects, then the server will know. And I think, is it at that point that we want to write a connection, or do we want to just have it in from the get-go and then update it? And I'm like, it's tricky. But like I said, it's very high level at the minute in my head. So we're going to break it down. The first thing that I think needs to be tackled is we just need to set up a way of writing client IPs to our text file. That's all we need to do. You'll remember the criteria I set out previously. So there may be cases when the text file is empty. There may be cases when the text file's got 2 connections in and you have to save to a new line. And there may be times when the connection file's only got 1 and it's an available connection. Therefore, you want to match up the new client with the existing one in the connections text file, because they'll probably be playing together. Although that may not necessarily be true, which I think is probably something I need to work around. But anyway, in order to ascertain which of the 3 states the text file is in, the first thing we need to do is we need to load all of the information in the text file into a list. So we have a file reader here. Basically, it's like if you drop this reader part and you just have a file, then yeah, you just have a text file. The file reader, it gives it some extra functionality. I don't know if you would call it like encapsulation or what it is, but it takes a text file, bolts on some extra bits onto it so that it can then be read from. That's basically the gist of it. We then pass the reader objects to a scanner class. So this scanner is going to look to our file reader objects in order to read information. We make a new connections list. So the connections here, annoyingly, the connections here refer to both single connections and connections between clients. The best way to think about this is these connections are just entire lines of the text file. I'll explain what I mean by that. So traditionally, when I say connection, I either have client IP and I say, okay, that's a connection, or I say client IP and opponent IP. And this entire thing is a connection. It's a connection between the two of them that we're bothered about. In this instance, we can have both. So we can have, why did I delete all the code? All of what I've written. There we go. So we can have this. So both of these will sit as elements within the connections list in our write connections method, and they both count as connections. But as you'll see, one of them is a sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, like a matched connection, and one of them is, I don't know, available. It's an available connection. So the best way to think of connections in this instance is it just refers to lines of the text file. So that's a connection because it's a line of the text file. This is a connection because it's a line of the text file. And that's kind of how I'm handling it in a minute. Oh no, what have I done? Oh, okay. I thought I'd broken it, but I haven't, so it's fine. So if you want to call this list lines of the text file, feel free. It makes more sense. We then have this while loop, and the while loop checks that there is a new line in the text document, and provided there is, it will add that new line. It will add that new line to our our list. Oh my god, I did that so many times. I did a tutorial list and called them arrays for the entire time. I had to cut like half of it. There's probably still stuff in there where I call it an array. It's really annoying. Anyway, so we check that there's still information in the connections text file. We upload it to, we save it to our connections list. And eventually, once there's no more information in the text file, we close the scan and we close our reader. And that's the reading portion done. This is now the writing portion. So you notice the first distinction I've made is the text file empty or is it not? So if connections.size does not equal 0, that means that it has picked up something in our connections text file. If there's no text in it, so obviously ignore this. But if there's nothing here, then this will come out as 0. If that's the case, then by default, all we're going to do is we're going to make a file writer. We're going to pass that to our print writer, and we're going to print the IP and the port number to this text file here. So in that instance, okay, so pretend we scan the connections text file, we found nothing. Open it up, write our object, write the IP, and then write the port number. So I know 127.0.0. Wow, I've butchered that. 127.0.1, and then we want a comma, and then 9568. Yeah, there we go, cool. So that is what will be written by default. So this is assuming the text file is empty. The first thing we're going to do is we're just going to write the IP straight in with the port number, job done. So that's the first case. You'll notice that the print writer and file writer are very similar to the input and output. Mainly the input stream reader thing that we were setting up. So if you want to go and check out that video, I think it's like 10 or 11. I'll put a link to it. It kind of explains this in a bit more detail. Once this is done, we then close both the writer and the file writer, and the print writer. And that's it for that. You'll notice all of this is the exact same. It's all the same. There's just a couple of tweaks. So if we find data in our connections text file, we're going to run a for loop, and the for loop is going to loop through all of the lines of the text file. So that means if there's a line with 2 IPs in it, it's going to print that out as soon as we've got this print statement, just to make sure this is just for debugging purposes. So if there's 2 IPs in a line on the connections text file, then we'll print out 2 IPs. If there's just one, we'll print out one. Presumably if it's blank, it won't be printed out. It might print out the last line, I'm not sure. If we find 2, what I have done is, what have I done? Okay, so the way this is set up is at the start of every IP, if you'll remember, I put a -127. That's just how Java seems to do it. So it puts a dash when you write the inet address. So this if statement is looking for that dash to make sure that we have an IP, but it's making sure that there isn't a space. The reason for that is because with this print statement here, you'll notice that we write the IP, we write this, well, sorry, that's a really bad example. Say we take the default one, so this is if no information is in the connections text file. We're going to write the IP, so it'll be -127 or whatever your IP is. There'll be the colon and there'll be the port number, but there won't be a space. The reason that there's a space is because we want a space between that and the new IP that we're going to match it with. So this first if statement is checking, okay, we have an IP, but do we have 2 IPs? So if there's a dash and a space, then we know that there's 2 IPs. If there's a dash and no space, then we know that we've just found 1. And in the event that we found 1, then chances are we're going to be matching this address to our new friend that we found. So yeah, okay, got it in my head. So we're making a file writer, making a print writer, same as always. You'll notice that this is a print line and that it starts with a space. So the default one, if say we're going from default to one connection exists, right? In the default, there isn't a print line, so it means that the writer hasn't moved on to the next line of the text file. It's just moved on to the character after the end of this information. So the last digit of the port number is where the writer stops, and then it will wait on the next character after that to start writing again. This statement is going to write a space, so we know now that we've got 2 IPs on that line, and it's going to write the exact same information as our default. It's then put the print line. So what it means is when it's done writing that, in this case, it's going to move on to a new line, unlike in the other 2 statements where it's not going to move on to another line. And then lastly, we want to exit the loop. So even if I don't know if that's a good thing or not, because my thinking was there may be multiple sets of connections in the text file, but you may read the very first connection, find that it's just a single IP, match it, and then you want to cancel the for loop. But I don't necessarily know that, the matching system that we set up in connection container. Is it connection container, or is it just our save connection method? So our save connection method may match up connections differently to our write connection, meaning that your opponent may not be your opponent in the text file as it is in the array, in the list, if that makes sense. So they may match players up differently to each other, which is a big problem. The way to get around that, I think, is going to be by using the connections list. So I think I will write the connections list. Well, I'm going to have to rename the connections list as well. Oh, actually, it's different. Is it a different data type? Yeah, it is. Nice. Okay. So I'm pretty sure you can have things of the same name, provided they're different data types. Pretty sure that was a lie. We'll call it connection containers. There we go. That makes sense. Containers. Sick. So I'm thinking in the next video, I'm probably not going to do it in this video. In the next video, we're going to be incorporating our connection list so that the right connections is going to be matching the connections that we actually have existing, i.e. your opponent matches in both the saved connections connection container list and in the right connection text file. I also have an error. It's because I'm not passing it my array, but now I am. So boom, get wrecked. Is there anything else I need to do? I don't think so, to be honest. I've noticed there's a duplicate in what I'm doing. So any of you that spotted this, congratulations. If we take this final else statement, so this happens when we find data in our. Oh, this isn't even going to work properly. Because what I'm saying is we've said that the connection file isn't empty. We've got a for loop to loop through it. But we're only really scanning the first line, because all this is saying is if the first line has one available connection, save the connection to that same line, as in line in the text file. If this here, this here will be if the first line has two, and if it has two, we're just going to save it on the next available line, which don't think is correct. Don't think that's right. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess, really. So I think to tidy it up, I'm probably going to want to move this. Not least to mention this line here is wrong as well. So you'll notice that we had a print line, therefore it's going to move the writer down to a new line anyway. So we don't need to then do -n to put this text onto a new line, because then we'll end up with like gaps. Yeah, I think the problem was when I wrote this code, I was testing it with one line in the connection text file. So if I have five lines in the connection text file, it's going to cause some problems. I'm trying to think what I can do to rectify it, because I think the general gist is okay. I don't think we need to have these duplicates, if that makes sense. So my thinking is, what is it? If we first of all, if we get rid of this, if connections dot size, I think I know what I'm going to do. So currently, what we've got is we're saying, okay, we've got data in our connection size, in our connection list, or we don't. So this is if the text file is empty, do this. If the text file is not empty, loop through every line of the connections text file, and then match up a IP with an empty IP on on whatever line it's on. But there's nothing to say what we should do if connections.size equals, well, if it doesn't equal 0, but there isn't an available line to put our connection on. So I think if we, this is really tricky. I think the way that I'm going to do it is we're going to add a boolean. I'm going to call it written. It's false. So in here we're going to set written. Oh dear. This is another example of flags, by the way, just in case you guys haven't already seen my amazing while loop tutorial. What this is doing is it's just indicating whether or not the IP is being written to I don't know if this is correct. This is really annoying. Okay, I know what I know what we're gonna do. So we've got this boolean, and it's a flag, and it's going to indicate whether or not the IP has been written to our text file. I feel like I'm going to remove this. It's a ballsy move, I know, but I'm going to do it. So what I've decided is I'm going to reformat this while I'm talking to make it look nice. So what I'm thinking is we're going to go into the for loop by default. If the for loop equals 0, I feel like it's just gonna skip the for loop immediately. If this causes an issue, then obviously we will have to rethink this. But for now, what I want to say is we're gonna we're gonna loop through all of the lines in the connections text file automatically. If that happens to be 0, then it's not gonna loop through. I hope. So we've removed the original if statement. And then all we're going to have down here is we're going to have an if to say if written equals false, then do this. And written is going to equal false if the file is empty, or well, just if the text that we're writing to it if the new IP hasn't yet been written to the text file, written's going to be false, because written is false by default. The only time that written is going to be set to true is if we've matched the IPs. So if we haven't, we're just going to want to print it out to the next available line on the screen. And I feel like this code is going to do that. So if written equals false, there we go. I hope and I pray that that works. I don't really want to test it now because I feel like this video has just been a bit all over the place as it is. So this has got some sort of warning on it. Sure, okay, we'll do that. You're not upset anymore, fantastic. Why are you upset? Type may be primitive. It is primitive. What's the problem? I might search that later. I don't know why I can't use booleans. Leave me alone. Hang on, actually. Oh, it's spelled with a lower B. Oops. I feel like I've done that somewhere else as well. I need to go and check through my code now to see where I've been spelling boolean. Okay. Anyway, the point is, I feel like everything is tickety-boo now. I'm not testing this today. I'm gonna probably go back to bed. If you've enjoyed, then please do like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. We recently reached 3 subscribers, so it's kind of a big deal. If there's also something I've been thinking about, if you guys have got any suggestions of anything you want me to cover specifically, so if there's any specific techniques or stuff that I could do within this series that you guys want me to showcase or kind of talk about, then I'm more than happy to do that. Equally, if you've got any project ideas, you know, this isn't going to last forever, and you know, if coronavirus carries on, then I'll still be tinkering away and I have a lot of free time. So if you guys have got any new suggestions, that would also be greatly appreciated. But apart from that, I will see you guys in the next one for another testing video.